Hi everybody and welcome to another Gaffer in Gear. Today it's another gear review. I must confess, until they got in touch with me, I'd never heard of this brand. It's Digitalfoto and this light is their Chameleon Pocket. It's a bit bigger than the Aperture MC, although the advantage it does have over the Aperture MC is it is brighter. So in tungsten it's 45% brighter, in daylight it's 66% brighter. So that puts it pretty much to an identical brightness of the Nanlite 6C, which I reviewed last week. This unit is marginally brighter, only marginally in daylight, and this unit is marginally brighter in tungsten. All right, so a good place to start any review is how much does it cost and what do you get for your money? Okay, so this costs about 109 to 110 Australian dollars, which I'm guessing is about 70 to 80 US dollars. Now for that money, you get a USB charging cable, you get a bag to protect your light, you get the light, of course, which has a steel outer shell, plastic front and plastic back. It's pretty durable, it's not going to break anytime soon. Okay, it's very durable actually. And you also get a steel ball mount. Okay, so that locks into the bottom. So it's a standard 1/4 inch thread, so it'll fit all your film industry TV spigots. The ball mount has a camera shoe, so you can put it on top of a DSLR camera, for example. You can also disconnect that, that shoe mount, and you've got another 1/4 inch screw here, so you can mount this onto a light stand or onto a Magicam via a spigot, for example. Okay, now in terms of where you can purchase this, this is sold online, and I do have a link below for purchasing it. Now, this is the first time I've had a link for purchasing a light or a direct affiliate link. And a lot of you have suggested, out of concern, and I appreciate that, out of concern for me that I should have affiliate links and try and bring some money in and look after myself revenue-wise. I'm opposed to affiliate links, and the reason I'm opposed to affiliate links is if I have an affiliate link on my website and people buy equipment through that affiliate link, as opposed to going to one of the local distributors here, that takes money away from the local distributors. And if you're running a lighting business like I am, you need local suppliers and local distributors in your hometown. Because if you need a piece of equipment tomorrow, you're not going to be able to get it. Or if you've got an issue with a light and you need it fixed, there's going to be a huge delay if you've got to send it overseas. So that's why I'm opposed to affiliate links. They take business away from my community here in Melbourne. Now, the reason I've got a link for this is nobody sells this here in Melbourne, so I'm not taking work away from any of the local distributors. All right, so let's talk about the features of this unit and go through a run through. So it's basically only got 3 modes. It's got a CCT mode, and the CCT mode does boast a reasonable Kelvin range, 3000 Kelvin all the way up to 6500 Kelvin with very high color render scores. It also has a full HSI mode, which is your RGB color mode, and it has a special effects library. The library effects are a little bit ordinary, but bear in mind the price of the unit. And it can also run off a phone app. Now basically on the back of the unit, you've got a big slider on-off switch, you can't miss that. And on the display in the top right-hand corner, you've got the battery remain time. Now this battery remain time is pretty much 100% accurate. So I've put it through its paces and you can time it to literally the minute that it's going to turn off. So it's usually about 1 minute after it predicts, but pretty much you can depend on what that tells you. Now the display is straightforward and easy to use. The only criticism I've got is it is so small. If you need glasses, you're probably going to struggle using this light. Now in terms of the other buttons, you've got a menu button, a CCT hue button, and you've basically got left, right, up, down, and OK on a wheel over to the side. Now, in terms of operating this thing, the 2 main modes, CCT and hue, you switch between those by holding the CCT hue button down for a long press. Okay, hold it down for a long press again, and that changes your mode back. Now, in CCT mode, if you want to change your Kelvin, just scroll forwards and backwards along the scale there, and it gives you a clear indication of what your color temperature is. Now, if you want to change your brightness, you just use the up and down buttons. Now, there are a couple of things to note in the CCT mode. Number one is that it dims in 1% increments, but it only dims down to 10%. You can't dim below 10%. And the next thing's not really a surprise for the price point. It basically works like a bicolor light. So it tracks between its warm color emitter and its cool color emitter. Now, to get its extended CCT range, it does add in its blue color emitter, but it's not using all of its color engine to vector into a white point, but we can't expect too much for the price point. All right, so let's talk about the HSI mode, which is your color mode. So HSI stands for hue, saturation, and intensity. And it is worth pointing out that the HSI mode on this is incredibly well calibrated and very, very accurate. Okay, so to change to the HSI mode, we press the CCT and hue button down for a long press. Now, to select whether we're adjusting our hue, which is selecting our color point, or adjusting our saturation, which is how much white gets mixed in with the color, we do a very quick press of the of the CCT hue button. So a very quick press of that, and you can toggle between the two. Now, I've just got the hue selected, which is the color angle. Now, to adjust my hue, I just use the left and right button. So if I do individual presses, just one-off presses, it moves in increments of 1. If I hold the button down, it will scroll. And if I hold the button down for a long time, it will scroll faster. Now let's say we want to adjust our saturation, which is how much white light we mix in. Okay, so basically then we just press the CCT hue button, one press, and now we've got our saturation selected. So again, you use the left-right buttons to select how much saturation you're putting in. Now at any point, if you want to adjust your brightness, you use the up and down arrows to adjust your brightness. Now here's the thing though, your brightness will only go down to 10%. Now another thing to point out with the HSI mode, unlike other cheaper lights, and when I say cheaper lights, I'm talking about lights under about the $2,500 price point, this unit actually desaturates using its white emitters. It doesn't desaturate to some inaccurate RGB crap like a lot of other lights do. All right, so let's have a look at the effects now. Now to get into the effects, you basically press the menu button down and you've got a choice of 4 categories of your effects. Now you use the arrows to scroll around and select the menu that you want and then just press enter. So let's have a look at the fade effects menu first. So I'm going to go up to the top. So we've got, whoops, I've pressed too many buttons. We've got rainbow fade. Okay, so rainbow fade is basically a CCT color chase. Now with all of these fades effects, you can select the speed at which you fade or at which the effect happens. All right, so let's do a quick scroll down. So that's rainbow fade. The next one down is red fade. Got green. You've pretty much guessed what happens here. Blue, yellow. Let's skip a few. We've got cyan, purple, white fade, green and red. So that's interesting. So it fades up one color, fades down and then goes to the next color. Okay, we've got red and blue, green and blue. We've got a warm white fade, cool white fade, bicolor, so that'll go warm and then fade up and cool. Okay, so that was the fade menu of effects. Okay, the next menu across is the strobe, which is pretty much an identical menu, but instead of fading up and down, it's strobing. So there's no real point in showing you that. Okay, let's have a look at the pulse menu now. This is the pulse menu. So basically it just pulses each color. Now, here's your selections. This is rainbow pulse. Next one down is red and green pulse. Next selection is red and blue pulse. You sort of get the idea. Okay, so that's green, blue, and bicolor pulse. All right, let's have a look at the last category of effects, which is scenes. Okay, so this is fire. Now, in all of these effects, the only parameter of adjustment you have is the speed of the effect. Now, for me, this fire effect is a bit jerky. It seems to lack finesse. But then again, the light doesn't cost that much, and it's definitely not the worst fire effect I've ever come across. Okay, the next effect down is party. So pretty much you get the idea of that. The next one down is police car. Now with police car, you can only adjust the speed at which this happens. You can't change the color of the light or how many times it pulses. Next effect is TV light. You've got explosion. And the last effect is firework, which is pretty much explosion with color. Now the light does have an internal battery that will run it at full brightness for an hour and a half. But if you want to extend that runtime, you can with a USB battery pack. However, I would strongly recommend getting a USB battery pack that can output 2.4 amps because this light's maximum power draw is 12 watts. Now this battery, which can output 2.4 amps, can run this light at full power and simultaneously top up the battery. However, doing so sharply reduces the runtime on the battery pack. So I'd strongly suggest making sure that the internal battery is fully charged before running it off an external battery pack. All right, let's have a look at the phone app, and the phone app is called Rolly Lumen. This phone app can be downloaded on iOS or Android, and it is free. Now the app automatically detects the lights. Now to find your lights, click on the menu in the top left-hand corner. Any lights that have been discovered will be in the default group. And there's my 2 lights that I named earlier. Now, if you want to name the lights, you can do that in the Manage Bulb section, but we're not going to cover that. Now, to select the light you want to run, just click on the name. So at the moment, I've got both lights deselected, and if I want to operate the right light, I just click on that. Now, if I want to operate the left light, I go back into that menu, deselect the right light, select the left light, and now the left light is under my control. And if I want to operate both lights simultaneously, I just have them both selected at the same time. Now let's have a look at the CCT mode. So click on the CCT icon, which is up in the top right-hand corner. And the scale goes from 1000 Kelvin up to 10,000 Kelvin. Now the light, of course, doesn't go up to 10,000 Kelvin, it only goes to 6,500 Kelvin. So anything above this point has no functionality on the light. And vice versa, if you go down to 3000 Kelvin, there is no action below 3000. Now this app is extremely accurate. Whatever color temperature you've got displayed on the phone is displayed on the back of the light. You of course also have dimmer control. And down the bottom of the page you have presets. 3200, 4500, 5500 and 6500. Now if you want to go into RGB mode, just click on the RGB icon and the first thing that comes up is a full HSI mode. Now at the center point here, it's desaturated to its white color emitter. Now the only thing I don't like about this app is you can't dial in a HSI value. You can only select your HSI by moving your finger around. Now down the bottom of the page, you do have some presets. Now if you press the RGB button again, you'll go into a full saturated HSI mode. Now it's worth noting that the top row of presets is user changeable. Now at the bottom of the page where it says patterns, that's a basic list of effects. Now as far as I can tell, there is no way to save any of your settings in the phone app. Alright, so let's get into the technical part of the review now, and all of these stats are numbers that I collected here in my workshop using my colour spectrometers. Let's start off with brightness, and because these are small units, I'm measuring the brightness at a distance of 1 metre. Okay, at 3200 Kelvin we got 116 lux, at 4400 Kelvin we got 117 lux, and at 5600 Kelvin we got 141 lux. Now let's have a look at how accurately these units dial in a CCT. In warm white, that's 3000 to 4000 Kelvin, they were typically out by plus or minus 38 Kelvin. In your mid whites, that's 4000 to 5000 Kelvin, they were typically out by plus 171 Kelvin on average. And in your cool whites, that's 5000 to 6000 Kelvin, they were typically out by plus 158 Kelvin on average. Now let's have a look at the TLCI scores. Okay, for your cool whites, that's 3000 to 4000 Kelvin. The average TLCI score was a very respectable 98.7. In your mid whites, the TLCI score was 99 on average. And in the cool whites, the TLCI score was averaging 97. color vector testing now, which anything in color vector testing above 90 is a really good score. Okay, so color vector testing in the cool whites, 3000 to 4000 Kelvin, came in at 93.9. In the mid whites, you're looking at an average of 93, and in the cool whites, you're looking at a very respectable 92.3. Now let's take a closer look at our more commonly used Kelvins. When I dialed in 3200 Kelvin, I got 3170 with a TLCI score of 98. The CRI average was 95.3, however R9 and R12 were below 90. TM30 color vector testing suggests a more accurate score would be 95% color render with 103% saturation. Here is the color spectrum and all looks good. And color mapping reveals that the white point is off the Planckian curve by a delta UV score of 0.0049, which in old terms would be about a 1/4 plus green. When I dialed in 4400 Kelvin, I got 4610 Kelvin with a TLCI score of 99. The average CRI score was 95.6, and common these days with LEDs, R9 and R12 were both below 90. TM30 color testing reveals a more accurate score would be 93% color rendition with 102% color saturation. Here is the wavelength analysis. And color mapping reveals that the white point of the light is below the Planckian curve by a score of 0.0030 delta UV, which in old school terms would be a fraction more than a 1/8 correction gel. And when I dialed in 5600 Kelvin, I got 5728 Kelvin with a TLCI score of 98. The average CRI score was 95.6, and once again R9 and R12 were below 90%. TM30 color testing reveals a more accurate color render score would be 92% with 100% saturation. Here is the wavelength analysis, and the white point is extremely close and only out by plus 0.0009 delta UV. Now let's have a look at the RGB side of things and see how accurately these units dial in color vectors and saturations. And I have to say, these dial in more accurately than some of my $8,500 lights. Red, which should be 0 degrees, came in at 1 degree. Green was smack on at 120 degrees, and blue was smack on at 240 degrees. Yellow, which should be 60 degrees, came in at 72 degrees. Cyan, which should be 180 degrees, came in at 192 degrees. And magenta, which should be 300 degrees, came in at 270 degrees. Now let's have a look at how accurately the units desaturate. And it's worth pointing out that these units desaturate to roughly 6050 Kelvin. So I had my meter set to the D65 standard. Red, which should be 0 degrees, came in at 6 degrees with 41% saturation. Green, which should be 120 degrees, came in at 114 with 51% saturation. Blue, which should be 240 degrees, came in at 235 with 54% saturation. Yellow, which should be 60 degrees, came in at 64 degrees with 47% saturation. Cyan, which should be 180 degrees, came in at 179 degrees with 46% saturation. And magenta, which should be 300 degrees, came in at 283 with 34% saturation. Well, that's another review done. I'm Andrew Locke. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you on set sometime soon.